J.L. Hutchinson, and thank you for joining us this evening on 1220 Beyond the Word.
And I'm Evangelist Elaine P. Jones, co-host. Today we will be discussing the topic, Setting a Timeline, Step 2.
Yeah, this is Step 2 of my 7 steps to change your life. Last week we talked about identifying your goals. We did that for 2 weeks. So, guys, I wanted you to become focused on why is it so important to have a goal. And today we're going to look at setting a timeline and why is it so important in setting a timeline. We're going to give you that understanding of why it is so important and why God himself set a timeline. When he created the earth, he set a timeline. I want to put some things in perspective. First of all, we're going to start off by reading out of the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1 through 4. And Evangelist Elaine is going to read that just to put some things in perspective.
Okay, and it reads, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness."
Yeah, let's put some things in perspective. A day to God is 1,000 years. So, as it being 1,000 years, how long do you think it took God to create the earth? Was it in our time? Because he's outside of time. Right? Mm-hmm. So if you was to say 7 days God created the earth, he had a timeline. You said that God had a timeline. So 7 days is a timeline. Or you could put it in his perspective and say, was it within our timeline? Because God is outside our timeline. Mm-hmm. If it's in 7 days, was it 7 days in our time or 7 days in his time? It's almost like the East Coast and the West Coast, the time zone. Mm-hmm. But putting things in perspective and understanding that setting a timeline to do something takes a while to do things. So I don't want you to go out and think that you can do all your New Year resolutions and get everything accomplished. I always tell people you split the month up in 4 parts. You do everything a 90-day program every 3 months. So every 3 months you do that 4 times a year, and you'll come up with 12 months. So the first 3 months, you're basically taking the old ideas that you tried to use and dreams and desires, or maybe even thinking about going to a school or changing schools or changing jobs. You do that within the first 3 months of the year. And then when you get into the part of the next 3 months, so what you want to do, you want to start putting things in perspective, things that didn't work. You want your new plans that you have, old relationships, you want to end some of those, and you want to start new relationships. So after another 3 months, 6 months have passed. You're in the middle of the year. Right. So now you're getting prepared for putting those things really into action by executing a lot of the things that you had planned to do, that's on your things to do list, on your dream sheet, and some target things that you're looking to put things and getting things started. So when you get around to the time of the holidays, so this puts you at the last 3 months of the year, now it's time for you to slow down and start reminiscing and thinking of the results that you got from the ideas and the goals that you set. And now you're thinking about, okay, the decisions that you made, the choices you made, and now you're trying to fine-tune everything, and then you wind down and get yourself prepared for the following year. And the things that you did set up, your long-term goals and your short-term goals, now you start, then that's how you operate each year. And it's all within a timeline. Some people are good managers managing their time. But I want you to understand, when you set a deadline to achieve something, certain dates or times means, do. But it is, what you're trying to do is you want to get some type of result. It may not be what you wanted, but it's something that you can work from. You have made the effort. When somebody gets up in the morning, some people brush their teeth. First thing they do. Some people don't brush their teeth. They just comb their hair. But it's all according to the simple things that you do to get you to the point where you get your day started, and you set a timeline where you have to be at work or at school at a certain time. You basically do things to prepare yourself to meet that deadline.
Right.
So just as simple as that is the way that you do it on a bigger scale is setting your year up so that you could be able to accomplish some things. And also, as far as with setting the timeline, I want to put another thing in perspective other than the time and how long it takes. God does things when he has something prepared for you. And he wants you to do some things prior to that. He wants you to prepare yourself so that he can work within a certain time frame to give you those things. And Evangelist Elaine is going to read out of the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 10 through 11. And could you read that for us?
Yes. And it reads, verse 10, Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, Pass through the camp and command the people, saying, Prepare provisions for yourselves, for within 3 days you will cross over this Jordan to go in to possess the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess.
Yeah. And let's put this in perspective. Reality is real. When I say reality is real, is this. God was preparing them because he had already promised them the land that they were going to inherit. He's going to give them the land of milk and honey. Remember, Moses had just died. So Moses was their leader for 40 years, and Moses died. And when Moses died, here's a new leader, a younger person. So Joshua took over as the leader. And then the people following, you talking about, he got millions of people that are actually following him.
Right.
So he has to have some type of structure. So they had a structure, but more than that, he had to understand a timeline. And a timeline is that God had said to him to go prepare the people because they're going to be crossing over. So in the next 3 days, this is all going to come to a reality where they're going to start entering into the promised land. Remember, Moses they would walk around for 40 years in the wilderness. So a lot of those people died off. So these are the offsprings of some of the people that couldn't make it to the promised land. And sometimes it's like that in your family, where grandma couldn't do it. She couldn't go to college. Granddad, your dad, or your mom, and now you're the one that's in college. Now you're the one that's everybody's looking at because you're there to change some things, to actually affect the world, and also be able to carry on the promise of God for your generation and the generations to come. So, and that's what I want you to understand. When God sets something up and he has something prepared for you, you need to follow within that guideline. Because look, the world celebrates perception. So whatever they perceive, they believe. So if you look like you got it all together, look like everything's okay, they believe you. That's why Hollywood and being a celebrity is the biggest illusion, because that's not a reality.
Right.
What is the time frame of those people actually working to become who they are? But they have to do some things in order for them to become as famous as they are.
Right.
So it's some satanic things that they have to be involved in order to be able to be successful, to have the money, to have all the things
in that particular business.
Yes, that you think that you can go to get on American Idol and become a celebrity, or get on some talk show or whatever and become famous. You have to understand that the illusion is that it can do something to you. You have to be aware of your situation, and you also have to be aware of your environment. And that's what God was telling them, to consecrate themselves, be aware of where you are and what you're about to do, and that you are going to go over to the land that I promised you, because we can get lost in the dying world. Because if we believe what we see, the reality is not real.
Right.
But when God has something for you, it's a real thing, because God takes care of his provision. So I want you to understand that, because the other thing I want you to realize, that failure is the back door to success. And I say that because it lets you know what you're good at. It lets you know what you're weak at. Some people may be weak at writing things down, but they may can get a cell phone that has a management program on there, time management, and it works for them perfect. And some people, that may not work for them. Some people may need to just write down the calendar, write down things, and do it the old school way. So you have to understand that you may not be able to do the things that everybody else can do, but you can do the things that work for you. And that's why I tell people, backdoor is the failure.
Failure.
Get tongue tied. Yeah, failure is the back door to success, because failures affect you, but what it does, it brings everything together, and you never give up, even when you don't get the results that you want. Long as you get something that works for you, that's important.
Yes.
Because Joshua was doing something that Moses had started off doing,
right,
leading the people to the promised land.
Right.
So even though Moses couldn't take them, the failure that more people may say, well, he failed at doing that. No, it's the back door to success. So he learned all the things that Moses did wrong,
right,
and the others, the children that are now the offsprings that are in the Israelites, have learned the mistakes that their parents made,
right,
and we have learned the mistakes that our parents made. Like, I was listening to a guy today, he was talking about the choices. We're not our parents' choices. Our parents made some decisions, and the decisions wasn't popular, and it caused them to lose some things. But the thing is that they still have success because of their offspring. So each child that's in a family is endowed with a certain responsibility, right, to be able to fulfill what God has promised that family. So if that son or daughter fails to do that, it's not because God's promise was not fulfilled. It's because that child or that daughter or grandson made the wrong decision. They made the wrong choice, and that's what affected the family's promise that God had. So God will skip over that generation, and that person, not to say they're a failure or anything, they just going to get a different result. They was supposed to be an attorney, and they end up being a paralegal or something like that. But when we come back, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to get into what you can do this month. If you haven't done anything to prepare yourself for anything like this, I'm going to give you some instructions, some ways of putting yourself in a way of being able to manage your time, being able to control your time, because you have a promise that God has for you. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to get right into time management. This is Dr. Hutch. We'll be right back.
There are many different types of church loans available for your choosing, and choosing the right loan for your church is a very important decision. The traditional church loan, the easy qualifier, the church sanctuary saver, saving the church from foreclosure, and low down payment. You need to make those decisions, and we have experienced analysts that can help you. If you would give us a call at 216-264-6214. We will listen to your needs and ask questions about your church and make recommendations on which church loan product which we think is right for you. So call us today at 216-264-6214.
Welcome back to the Dr. Hutch Show. I'm Dr. J.L. Hutchinson, and we were talking about setting a timeline. Before we went on our break, I was getting you ready for what you can do this month, and based on time management, being able to work with a structure that is sound, that God has already promised you some things, but it's some things that you have to go through to take advantage. And the thing that I want people to understand is that your advantage is your time. Mm-hmm. A time for everything. Right. A time to cry, a time to die, a time, even want you to die now, but a time for everything. Right. You know, and you need to realize that when you have that, you have control of your time. Everybody has 24 hours in a day.
That's true.
What you do with that? Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about that? I'm going to strip you down. I'm going to show you time. When you look at your timeline during the day, what do you do? What do you do? Some people watch TV. How many hours do you watch television? If you was to go through your day and write down what you do with each hour of the day, mm-hmm. you'll be surprised about how unproductive you are. Mm-hmm. How unproductive, and you always realize that when you don't plan for something, you're going to get something no matter what. Right. So
I like to say it like this. Failure to plan is a plan to fail.
Yes. Yes, you become an expert in nothing if you do nothing. Mm-hmm. So I had a friend, and my friend used to always write everything down. I mean, everything. No matter what it was, they wrote it down. They wrote down as far as the calendar, everything that needed to be done was done. And it's where when you looked at the calendar for the beginning of the year, the whole year was planned out. Whose birthday was who? If this was a meeting here or a party here. See, we have control of our time, and I'm gonna share just the scripture with you real quick, because in Exodus 9:5, then God set the time. Tomorrow, God will do this thing. God will do His thing, and basically letting the Israelites know that He was about to do something. And the next day, what God did, He had killed off Egypt's livestock. He killed each animal, and none of the Israelites' animals died. Mm-hmm. All was the Egyptians. See, God sets a timeline. He said, this is going to happen at this certain time. Mm-hmm. You need to be so focus on your time. You need to examine your mishaps and your mistakes that you made last year. Mm-hmm. See, sometimes we need to just write things down, and sometimes we don't like to write things down. Writing things down puts things in perspective.
Right. That's so true.
When I was younger, I used to write poetry. I used to write a lot of poetry. I write things down because when it's time for me, when I'm going through something, whatever that time may be, I go back and I read it, and it ministers to me. Mm-hmm. I still do that today. I write things down, and I go back and I listen, or I listen to previous shows that I have done over the years, and it ministers to me. Mm-hmm. You know, just this week, I had a show that I did about 8 years ago, and it ministered to me. And it was like, God said, this is what, it's kind of crazy, but that's what happens. So, in saying that, let's talk about time management. How are you going to get anything done? How are you going to get anything done? You are blessed with the same amount of time as everybody else.
Right.
What you do with that time is yours, but your judgment is based on your judgment. So if you're going to write something down and you're going to set a goal, you say, well, I want to be a track star, but you smoking and drinking, how you going to be a track star? Or you want to go to the Olympics, but you can't. Why? Because you're afraid of heights, so you can't fly. So you got to, the Olympics, they had it in Russia this year, so you need to know. So you need to know that, hey, I can't fly, so what do? You settle for something else. See, you need to put...
Either that or get over your fear of flying.
Yes. And you see some of the Olympic people, Special Olympics, they have one leg, they can't, one arm, no arm. I seen a guy, he had no arms, no legs, and he was running the track meet. I looked and I said, this guy is not going to, what are you going to do? Crawl? He go roll? No, he was actually running. He was using his butt muscles and he was running. I was amazed. I mean, so he made up in his mind, even though he didn't have any legs, he had his muscles in his butt and he ran. I mean, so he must have worked out, So as him working out, he achieved something. See, your goals doesn't mean that you have to stay within a certain perspective in regards to your fears. You can overcome your fears.
Right.
And the number 2 thing I want you to do is the act or the process of planning and the exercising, basically conscious and control of the amount of time you spend on each event, any activity that you use, especially is to increase your effectiveness. So if you practice, do something, you write. I used to couldn't read for 5 minutes without falling asleep. So I learned how to read. So I started rapping because I was rapping back in the day. So I would rap, and that's what kept me up. And I would read a whole chapter. I read a whole paragraph. And so I just got to a point where I actually end up managing how long it takes me to read. So time management is an aid to manage your time when you're accomplishing your goals with a due date. So all you do is just put a due date. But in saying that, let's put a heart-to-heart moment with this, because setting the timeline is my shortest step. And we're just going to finish this up with this show. Can you give us a heart-to-heart moment?
Sure, Dr. Hutch. I have a verse in particular that I would like to share that God put on my heart, and this is from Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, and verse 1. And I'm going to read this from the New American Standard Bible, and it says, "There is an appointed time for everything, and there is a time for every event under heaven." Now I'm going to also read the King James Version, and it says, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven." And it goes along with what you were saying. God has some plans for us, yes. But you know what? He created us with the ability to set some times and some goals for ourselves. And that's what he wants us to do. The Bible is full of scripture telling us what to do, how to do things. And even this verse right here says there's an appointed time for everything. Everything. That means there's a time to go to school. There's a time to work. There's a time to have a family. There's a time to do something else. There's a time for work. There's a time for vacation. There's a time for everything. So we need to be conscious of our time and what we're doing. Now, I'm not saying you have to go and work on a rigid schedule throughout your life, but sometimes just even from increments of maybe a year or 5 years, just like you were talking about, reflect over your time. What have you done with your time? Have you managed those things that you set out to do? Have you even come close? And if you didn't, if you learned from those mistakes, Do you know that is so valuable? No one can teach you the things that you learn when you make your own mistakes.
Yes.
But you can certainly teach those things to someone else. Well, that's all I have to share for today. But I wanted to just really get that in everybody's hearts, that there is an appointed time for everything.
Yeah. And you know, folks, setting a timeline is so important. Just like when we do our show, we have a certain timeline. You know, you can't see it, but, you know, as far as on our videos or anything, but we manage our time. We manage our time and how long it's going to be, when it's going to stop recording, and if we have to do a part 2 to get everything out to you. You know, the Dr. Hutch Show is a show that basically helps you prepare yourself for what God has for you, to help you fulfill and be prepared for the promises and the things that God has for you. Is very important. I want you to understand that. Christian Crown Ministries is our ministry where we help impact people's lives around the world with the things we do. My 7 Steps to Change Your Life is part of my Power series, is to empower you, to prepare you to do the things that God has for you. And next week, we're going to be talking about overcoming problems in family. And that's going to take us 2 sessions, because, you know, when you're dealing with problems, you're dealing with a number of different things.
That's
and
so true.
We have a solution and a remedy to help you get over a lot of those things. But when you deal with family, that's more emotional. And we're going to talk about some generational curses. We're going to talk about some other issues that may be holding you back from what God has for you. And I just want to thank you for listening to the Dr. Hutch Show today, and I hope you can join us next week as we be talking about step number 3, overcoming problems in family. And we hope that discussion will impact your life. You've been listening to the Dr. Hutch Show on 1220 Beyond the Word. Have a good evening.